Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our show, we create content like what you're watching, and if you're listening, just to educate and engage individuals like yourself on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. And while we love talking about movies, my name is Captain Nostalgia, by the way. We are also recognize that not every movie is going to be helpful for your mental health. And these are our top 10 worst movies of 2021. And I am joined by the ever lovely Mr. Kales Black Nerd Magic Davis.
Hey, I hope everybody had a good holidays, a good New Year's. If you got snowed in like me, then your reaction may be a little bit different from mine's. But hey, this podcast is all about mental health awareness, and we have come here as saviors to tell you about our 10 worst films of the year. These are films that we want you to stay away from. Don't even give them a shot because they will do bad things to your mental health.
I am just going to put a spoiler warning on my list. Space Jam does not show up on this. I'm imagining it shows up on yours, so.
Oh, actually, surprisingly, no, it doesn't. I actually found Space Jam
Okay.
to be salvageable instead of these other films I got.
Yeah, it's weird. Space Jam is like being called like one of the worst movies of last year, and I didn't look at it like as like it was gonna be art. I honestly like it to me like it feels like something that would have come out in like 2001.
Yeah, it's a film that probably should have been made maybe closer to what the original Space Jam was, and there is. If you go and look on the internet, there are a treasure trove of potential sequels that was going to happen after Space Jam. So it feels like a film that is so far in the making that it's hard that should it really appeal to us, to the people who really grew up with the original Space Jam, or is it trying to appeal to the kids? And it does both, but sometimes it just really feels like a mismatch of out of date comedic ideas. But no, Space Jam, I think the reaction to Space Jam was a little bit overblown. It's the pinata of 2021 film season. It's a film that everybody chose to pick on that one film, and it was Space Jam. But Space Jam is actually something watchable if you can get away from the cringy jokes and the LeBron James, his ineptitude as an actor. Then you could probably enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say that like LeBron's gonna win like Oscars and that he's like going down as like one of the most talked about actors of this generation. Look, the reason that I tell people to watch it, I'm like completely ignore LeBron, ignore all the uses of the IPs, go in for Don Cheadle because Don Cheadle like just chewed the scenery in this movie and it works. Like I don't think I've ever seen him take on a role like this. I was really excited to like coming out of it. I was like, all right, this was actually really fun.
I mean, I said in my review as well, Don Cheadle is probably the only reason that anyone can really find some enjoyment in it. I mean, he really does go all in to this role. And it's, like you said, it's unlike anything that he's really ever done. And I commend him for it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So let's go ahead and get into this because these lists are typically longer episodes, but they are honestly like these are the type of episodes I look forward to doing yearly because while we do our top 10 lists, which you guys can check out at victimsandvillains.net/reviews. I published mine there, and then our Marvel correspondent Joshua Howell also published one as well. And if you guys want to check out Kales's, his is on Feel and Films RSS feed, so go check them out, Feel and Film Podcast. But Kales, let's just go. We're gonna go. This is the way it's gonna work. We're gonna Kales is gonna start with one. I'm gonna start with one. We're gonna go from best to worst, so from 10 to 1. And Kales, my man, what do you have? I'm also gonna when I start my list, I'll put a preface on this. But my dude, what do you have for number 10?
Well, number 10, I'll just start it like this. It's the little things that can get you caught. It's the little things that can rip you apart. It's the little things that can change your life. The Little Things is my number 10. And it's one of these films where maybe 30 years ago, it would have been an awesome film. I compared it almost to what Seven became 5 years later. It's almost like a 1990 film that finally got taken off of the shelf in 2020, and the writers and directors were still stuck in that era instead of bringing it to the present. Denzel, this cast, I mean, Denzel, you have Rami Malek, you have Jared Leto. You should expect that a cast like this, I mean, the film is supposed to be bonkers good as far as acting, but the problem is that Rami Malek is miscast. He's playing the stern detective who is always serious and always talks like this. He never changes tone. He just always talks like this because he doesn't have any feelings. And then you have a Jared Leto, who is a guy who we know is a method actor. He's dedicated to his performance, but his Charles Manson wannabe serial killer just didn't do it for me. What was even more perplexing is that he was getting Academy Award like buzz towards the end of earlier this year. People were thinking he was going to win Best Supporting Actor, and I was like, where do you see it? I mean, Jared Leto has done many more greater performances than what he's done in this film. And Denzel's never an L. Denzel will always give you a victory because he's Denzel, but even Denzel couldn't save this sinking ship. And it's made by John Lee Hancock, the same guy who gave us The Founder, the same guy who gave us The Blind Side. So if that shouldn't tell you about what you're going to get when it comes to this type of filmmaker for this director, then The Little Things is very, it will remind you about how John Lee Hancock is as a director, and it's not a good one. It's a dark psychological thriller that could have had more bite. Instead, I would rather you go watch Seven or Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, so we actually covered The Little Things way earlier in the year. I actually just in the Twitch chat right now put in the link to it. You guys can check out. We'll have links in the show notes where you guys can check out where we talked about this movie at length. And yeah, this movie, like, it had some great ideas. Like you said, like it feels like it's a 90s thriller that's trying to catch off of the hype of like Silence or Seven, and it just doesn't flow like right. Like it feels not only miscast, but like there are some like pacing issues and like plot holes that you didn't even address. And so it's like I walked out of that movie feeling like I not only had just wasted my time, but also had like wanted to know like legitimately because they never actually give you closure. Like that's probably the most frustrating thing about the movie.
It's a film that wants to give you that surprising twist, but when you find out what the twist is, it's very disturbing, and it's also like, well, what did the other 2 hours of this film mean if this is where you're going to go with it? It's a film that tries to teach you lessons about mortality, about regret, about when does it become about taking it too far, especially from a position of power. It's a film that deals with these themes, but at the same time, it doesn't go deep into them. It kind of just mentions them and doesn't do anything with it. And a lot of the time, it just really falls victim to its own hype. And there was a lot of hype for this film, and this happening at the beginning of the year let me know what we were looking for ahead. And when it came to this countdown, I knew that this was going to show up when it came for this podcast, and it did. It didn't fail me.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched a lot of like weirder stuff this year. So like this movie is kind of like it's not bottom barrel, but it's also right now it's just kind of eh. Like it's very much just kind of like a middle of the line like just thing. So our friends over at You Have to Watch This podcast are in the chat right now and want to know if we're talking about 2011 or 2021, which must mean I messed up on the Twitch title.
Uh-oh.
There you go. We're talking about 2021. So yeah, I don't know, man. The Little Things feels like a missed opportunity. It is like still surprising that like this time last year there was so much award buzz around Leto's performance in this, and I was like, dude, like he was all right in this, but like I feel like this is what I wanted from like his Joker, not necessarily his like Manson wannabe.
Yeah. Yeah, I would rather watch an extended cut of Jared Leto as Joker instead of watching him in this film.
My number 10 is actually one you just watched, and it is Your Ants. If you guys have been with our show and listened to a lot of episodes Celeste and I have done, you know that we have an inside/running joke going where I love the hunts. The poster's right behind me if you guys are watching this on Twitch. And now Celeste has found his equivalent to the hunt, and that is my number 10, which is Don't Breathe 2. I had really high expectations for this movie. Maybe that's partially my fault coming into this movie, but let me just say that I watched the original one, and the original one is one of the most uncomfortable movie experiences that I've had in recent memory. The turkey baster scene alone just kind of like, I mean, yeah, you just watch Colossus' face if you guys are watching this on Twitch. It's like, it's an unsettling, uncomfortable scene. And this movie basically tried to have the audience sympathize with a rapist and a kidnapper, and basically just tried to do like a retread of the first film without the emotional core. And that to me was really why I call this one of the worst movies of the year. I'm also going to preface this by saying my top 10, these are not actually my top 10 worst of the year. My actual top 10 worst of the year are movies that you guys haven't really heard of. So one of the rules that Celeste and I made when we came into this was that they had to have like some semblance of a theatrical release and or have had to have a streaming release this year on a notable platform. This one, to me, I don't know, man. Like, I just, the first film, it's not perfect, but it stands so well on its own that you don't need a sequel. And the fact that like they did all of this press talking about how like this one was going to be more brutal than the first one, I felt like this was like the best example I can give was coming off of The Strangers to The Strangers Pray at Night, where you have this like legitimately like creepy, just self-contained story, and it has such impact, and then you move into a straight slasher ripoff, and that's what Don't Breathe 2 was to me.
Wow, I think we watched two different films. I mean, here's what I'll settle with on Don't Breathe 2. It is uncomfortable to have your protagonist be the guy that was in the first film, having turkey basers and taking, and doing things with women that is just disgusting. Yes, it's very uncomfortable. And my biggest worry was that watching Don't Breathe 2 is that they were going to make this guy into a hero. Well, I didn't get a sense of that. I saw that this is just a guy who happened to come across this little girl, and now he's pretending to be her parent in some kind of sick way because he's lonely. And when you find out what happens with this girl's parents and the whole pivot shift that comes from that narrative was actually something that kept me hanging on. I came into this expecting to hate it. I really did like the original Don't Breathe. I really like the concept. If you look at Don't Breathe 2, look at it as almost like, okay, let's pretend that this is not sequel. Let's pretend that this is just an original film. Then, hey, this film probably works so much better. But since it is a sequel to Don't Breathe, and then you have that leading protagonist character, and then you have that it just, instead of it turning into like a suspenseful, like we're sneaking around in the dark and it's almost like a Blair Witch Project kind of sense of urgency, and you go straight to slasher mode, yes, it's definitely going to not play well for the people who were big fans of the original one. But I'm one of the defectors. I like the original and I like this one.
And that's fine. Like I'm glad that someone got entertainment out of this. For me, I don't know if it's because I have such like steep love and like I'm so into this genre that I can call when scenes are going to be predictable. Like I was calling things as they were happening in the theater, and I never want to feel like that as a viewer, to where I'm like, oh, this person is going to show up here, and then that character makes the turn, and boom, there's those characters coming face to face. Like, to me, I felt like it was boring, it was predictable, like all the intensity, all of the characters, like all of the antagonist elements, like the drug guys or whatever they were, like they just were stock characters. I think that was kind of one of my biggest problems, is that these characters just felt underdeveloped. Like, even Stephen Lang's character just doesn't feel like he's developed at all from moving in from the first film to this film.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Lang, he's good in this film for what he does. I mean, they almost make him almost. They almost make him like this kind of Terminator guy. Like they say that he's a Navy SEAL and he gets to do all this good stunts. Well, it's probably not him, probably somebody younger in makeup, but he gets to almost be like an action hero, which, you know, for the people who find it uncomfortable, it probably is. And I will agree with you. The villains in this film, I mean, it's just another copycat home invasion squad that comes through, and they're just all about being evil and, you know, just being the worst of the worst. It's, yeah, the characters are definitely not a strong element of this film. I agree.
Yeah. If you guys have seen any of these movies in the chat, let us know. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Are we overcritical of these movies? If not, yeah, let us know. All right, so what do you got for number 9?
So number 9, I have Evil Dies Tonight. Halloween Kills. It is the sequel that proceeds to take a piss on the original reboot that came out in 2018. Listen, I understand that Michael Myers is a terrifying force of nature. I understand that this guy is almost like body build strong and he never dies and he never goes away. But what happened to Michael Myers being a guy who sneaks in the dark, just grabs you from the back and gets you by a shock or a surprise? In this new film, they make Michael Myers pretty much John Wick. He just goes around just murdering, torture, desecrating anybody in his path. And it feels closer to gore porn than any Halloween film I've seen before. And I'm even speaking about the Rob Zombie films. I mean, especially Halloween 2. This film feels even more outrageous than that because you're jumping off straight after the end of Halloween. But then what you do is you proceed to put one of your main characters in a hospital for 2/3 of the film. Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't do anything in this film except lay up in a hospital bed. And then you get this rogue gallery of all of these characters who come along in this film, and you think, okay, that's going to be the guy, that's going to be the girl, that's going to be the person that falls. But no, it's like any person that gets involved, they immediately get killed afterwards. And then instead what you get is this motivational speaker middle-aged guy that goes around and just does evil dies tonight, evil dies tonight. And it leads into a bad attempt at societal messaging where we are talking about riot mentality, mob mentality, and it just does not work. I mean, Halloween Kills, this is one of my most anticipated films of the year. And I think the reason why I rated it so low is because it really, really did make me want to turn the TV off. It did. If I was not a guy who is serious about film, I would have not finished this. I would have just immediately shut it off. Thank God that it was a Peacock release, because seeing this in theaters, I would have asked for my money back. And I love Michael Myers, but this felt like such an easy link to just get an easy rock to skip over in order to complete the trilogy, which will be Halloween Ends this year.
Much like my last pick for Don't Breathe, too, this one, it could not be farther from my top 10 worst list. It's an honorable mention, actually, for my best films of the year. Dude, I had so much fun with this movie. Like, I understand everyone's gripes with it, but for a guy that A, loves horror, loves this franchise, and also loves just blood, dude, like, I had an absolute blast with this movie. Like, you guys can hear us. We did an episode about it, Mark and I, for Bisgazing with Andy from the Love What I Love podcast, and like all three of us just like really had a blast with this, man. Like, I ended up seeing this movie in theaters 3 times just because, yeah, dude, I had a blast with this movie, man. Like, Michael Myers, like, you know, this is the most brutal we've ever seen him, and
Yes.
I think that, one of the things, because we were supposed to get it back in 2020, and David Gordon Green kind of talked about the third act of the movie, kind of comparing it to the civil unrest that we were seeing in in June of last year, and I think from a social commentary standpoint, this movie definitely fails. But I think this is a movie that is not for the common audience. I think this is a movie that you are going into to basically satisfy fans of the genre, basically.
Now, your outlook on it, I can agree with, especially from you. Like, I know you are a dedicated Halloween fan guy. Like, I know that you live and breathe by those films, and you live and breathe by a lot of films in the slasher genre. So I can't disagree with anything you said. I like that we both agreed on the social commentary being a little bit weak, but as far as for anybody who loves Michael Myers, then hey, I mean, this is just a new generational take on the character. For me, it didn't work, but hey, if it worked for others, hey, if you like it, I love it.
Yeah, and I am really looking forward to bringing this home next week. Best Buy has this really sweet steelbook that they're doing with it, so I'm like preparing to be there when the store opens at 10 a.m. next week and just be like, I'm here because Evil dies tonight. I don't know. There's also an extended cut that's coming home. It's supposed to, I don't know. I don't understand like the extended cut when they say this and it's like there's only 2 minutes of extra footage. It really changes the entire movie. No, it doesn't. I guarantee you it does not. All right. Well, much like your number 10, my number 9 is another January release from last year, and that is the Marksman, the newest Liam Neeson movie. Basically, Liam Neeson plays this guy that is a retired, I believe, assassin or like Navy SEAL, one of the two, and he was a great marksman. And basically, he like gets into a situation where he has to like get this kid to Mexico, or else he gets deported. And like it does this like very like surrogate father like and son thing really well, but that's like probably like an eighth of the film's narrative. Everything else around it is just like an utter mess. And it just kind of feels like one of those things. Like January is notorious for being like a simple cinematic graveyard where it's just like a dumping ground for just like crappy movies. And every once in a while, you get like rarities like Split, but for the most part, it's just a dumping ground. And The Marksman definitely just feels like it was just dumped and left to be forgotten about.
Well, hey, this looks like this is Liam Neeson's career now, just taking on these random action hero roles. Like after Taken, I think Taken was a blessing and a curse for Liam Neeson. Maybe it's not a curse. Maybe he does enjoy doing these films, but it feels like after Taken, he's playing the same guy. He's playing the same guy. All that changes is what he's looking for and what he's hunting for.
What's really bad about this too is that like he's gone on record saying that like he's just not going to do roles like this anymore, and then he always ends up doing it. Like we're a few weeks away from his latest movie, Blacklight, which is supposed to be the same exact thing. Someone on Facebook shared the poster for it, and they're like, someone spelled Taken 4 wrong. Like the entire premise is just another Taken movie, and like all of these movies are basically Taken. That's it. You're totally right.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what it is. That's why I don't even touch these with a 10-foot pole. Like you won't catch me watching a Liam Neeson action film these days. I'll watch some Schindler's List. I'll watch some of his films before Taken, but after Taken, nah, it's just Liam Neeson's just turned to action hero Liam Neeson.
Yeah. It's not even they're not even good movies at this point. hence my number 9. But there's 8 movies that are worse than this one, so it's not terrible. What do you got for number 8?
So for number 8, I have a interesting film that was released on Amazon in February, and it's called Bliss, with Owen Wilson and Selma Hayek. Owen Wilson and Selma Hayek, two actors that I do love and I'm a big fan of. So I came in here with some expectations for it. It's a film that tries to be like The Matrix, where you have this story about this one person who's living in a simulation, but he doesn't realize that's a simulation. But the simulation is actually real life, like despair, homelessness, like all of this. But this is what the real life is. But his simulation is where he's a rich man and he has his wife who's Selma Hayek, and they both travel to they have this thing in the future where you can travel to real life. You can actually go and see how it is to live and struggle through life, and then come back to your regular life, and you appreciate that. And I can understand that. I can understand that we need to be appreciative of where we are in life. We don't need to worry about, what we're going to achieve, what we're going to have. Like, how can we appreciate that if we don't appreciate what we already have? I understand the message, but it's just like how plainly stated the message is throughout this film. It's very incoherent. It mumbles throughout, trying to be philosophically important, trying to be smart, trying to be fake deep in a sense. And it's sad that actors like Owen Wilson and Selma Hayek are in roles like this, because they deserve better than this. And I know that this is an Amazon film. It's released on streaming, so it probably didn't have any high expectations. But come on, guys. If you want to be like The Matrix, if you want to be like these science fiction films that really ponder into what life means and what does it mean to, not have a silver spoon in your mouth, what does it mean to have it all? If you're going to go into these territories, then you got to be better about it. Don't be simple-minded.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I loved the poster for this, but I largely don't trust movies with that are on Amazon. I've heard a lot of bad things about Amazon movies. Like, that's like the one company I try to stick away from anymore. And you laugh, but dude, like people like you and Aaron and like a couple other like critic friends I have just like talk about like how bad these movies are. And don't get me wrong, there are exceptions, like One Night in Miami. What's the other one? Sound of Metal. Like, two great movies, but I don't know, dude. Like, I saw the advertisement for it, and I read the synopsis, and I was just like, nope, I can't do this one. So, I actively avoided this. This is probably the first of a few on your list I haven't seen, and I think you haven't seen my number 8 yet either.
Probably not. Let's see what that is.
So my number 8 is a movie called Separation, and this was released. This was a horror movie that was released in April of this year. went into theaters, and it holds a wonderful 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm in good company, at least. Basically, this is the story of a comic book artist who is like struggling to find balance between like kind of like creating and like finding fame and like being a dad. And so like his daughter kind of gets this like gift of like connecting with like spirits, and it's just a mess, dude. Like from start to finish, it is a mess. Like it's such an interesting concept, and it's not terrible in its acting. It's really not. Brian Cox is in it, but I mean, like it is such a missed opportunity because like the artistry and like the visual effects for this are legitimately creepy and just look fantastic. And like this movie, I had forgotten about this movie until I was like going through my letterbox, and I was like, wow, I totally forgot about this movie. And that shows you what kind of quality I walked out of here with. Someone recently asked me if they should watch it because it is streaming for free right now on Peacock. And I was like, dude, not even joking, it is one of the worst movies, not only of this year, but that I have seen in like the last like 10 years. Like it's an awful, awful movie.
Wow, and usually, Josh, you're very like nice about films, even if you don't like them. But you gave this one a big thrashing, so I believe you.
Look, I understand. Like I try my best to like give the artist the benefit of the doubt, but like if you can't even function on like character development and like you're trying to do too much with your characters, then that's like basic storytelling right there. Like I just feel like understand the story you're trying to tell and then craft your characters around that concept, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So enough said. What do you have for number 7 on your list?
Number 7 is the live action Tom and Jerry remake. Many people might have forgotten about this film, and I don't blame you. I've forgotten about it until it was time to do this episode, and I happened to come by my list and I saw this sitting right there at number 7. I grew up watching Tom and Jerry like most of us did on Cartoon Network. I mean, it was one of my favorite cartoons to enjoy, and I loved the constant like battle between Tom and Jerry, the wits, the smarts, and even the effects and just the comedic effect that it had, especially as a child. So seeing this film now coming back for a new generation, I understand the intent. I understand the intent of bringing back these characters for a new generation of kids to enjoy, but this was not it. This film, it feels like it's another dated film. I mean, this film opens with Pigeon singing A Tribe Called Quest, Can I Kick It? And then there are a lot of 90s songs references throughout this film that are just weird. And I just don't understand it. The battle between Tom and Jerry, I mean, there are some moments where, you get that sense of arcadey freedom and just like hijinks. But then you also have this human story, and you have Chloe Grace Moretz, which I don't know what's going on. Like, this girl had a promising start to her career. She played in Kick-Ass as Hit Girl, and I thought that this is going to be the springboard for her to have a very promising career in Hollywood. But she continues to be in these films that do not use her talent at all. Badly written, tedious to watch, and just cringy, all around cringy. I mean, this film definitely is a film of its year. It tries to put in TikTok references, Facebook references, millennial humor. You have all these adults who act very aloof, and it's played up for bits, and it's not funny at all. The story, is there even a story in this film? I mean, it kind of distracts away from what the film is about, Tom and Jerry. I really wish the film was just Tom and Jerry just being in one single house and just having a battle. That would have been a more entertaining film than putting these animals inside of a hotel for some reason. And the animation in this film, like Tom and Jerry are almost computer generated, but they're playing next to human characters. And the effect is very uncanny valley at times. Like, it's very weird. Like, human characters will walk in with animals that are clearly cartoon drawn. It's like, okay, are we living in like a multiverse? Are we in another dimension where this actually happens? It's just a film that is very forgettable. I don't understand why it was made. I'm thinking because HBO Max wanted to put an easy hit, and it was a hit on streaming services. I will give them that. So this film was a success, but quality-wise, it's not memorable.
Yeah, so just to kind of put this into perspective, I saw this in theaters, and I covered it early for our website, and this is on my list too. It's a little bit higher up than yours. But I will also say, and I will talk more about this when it comes to on my list, but just to put this in perspective, I saw this in a theater filled with parents and their kids, and no one was laughing. Not a peep from the children, not a peep from the parents. Like, if that doesn't tell you anything about the quality of your family movie, that your intended audience isn't even laughing, then you deserve a spot on this list. I am sorry, my friend.
It's hey, that is the big meter right there. That is the sign that tells you that your family film doesn't work. It's when even parents and kids, because usually if you're a parent, which, well, I'm not, we're not any parents, but you know that if you take like your little niece or your little nephew to a film, and usually kids will fall for anything. I mean, it doesn't take much to get them stimulated, but when you take them to a film that's expected to get them stimulated and it doesn't at all, then that's very concerning and makes me wonder if this should have been an HBO Max exclusive, which probably it would have been a much better light if it was not a theatrical release at all.
Now, and I watched so like into the week of when I'm like covering films for the website, part of my process is like if it's a popular IP, like I'll dive into a little bit of like the backlog to kind of get in the mindset. So I ended up actually watching the original 93 movie before that. I'd never seen it before, watched a little bit of the episodes, and like even the episodes or even the 93 movie doesn't really flow. Like Tom and Jerry just kind of seems like to be one of those properties that you can't really do for an hour and a half. Because that concept of a mouse and cat like just works really well for like a 6-minute short, but not necessarily a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, they're better off as being cartoons. Some things are just not meant to take on being a full-length film. Some things are just better digestible when they are 20, 25 minutes instead of just being 80 minutes long.
Yeah, that's the last I'm going to say of that before I get to mine. My number 7 is one that I think you and Aaron both liked, and that was Voyagers. Voyagers had a great cast. It had Colin Farrell, Ty Sheridan, Lily Rose Depp, Foyne Whitehead, among others. And basically, the idea of this society gets propelled into space, and they're basically trying to like raise the next generation of kids and to be colonized on another planet because all of Earth's resources have run out. And you kind of go through this like Lord of Flies situation, but in space. And I don't know, man. Like I read Lords of Flies in high school, and I wasn't a fan of it. Like I saw this in theaters, and I had really, I would say, high expectations for it, but like I just didn't know what to expect from this. I really, really like Lily Rose Depp as an actress. I really think she has a really promising young career ahead of her. I really am looking forward to seeing Wolf when I get a chance to. But I don't know, dude. Like this movie, like it looked pretty and it looked stunning, but honestly, man, like it just couldn't grab me, man. Like I didn't connect with any of the characters. Like it was predictable. It just felt really bland to me.
No, it's definitely one of your basic space films. It leads you to believe that it's going to be more than that, especially in the beginning. Now, for me, I had a more favorable look at this film, all because of how it starts off with the first and the middle act. You're kind of left in a suspense of not knowing what's going on, but you're interested. You're wondering, okay, why are these people on this ship? Why are they not allowed to eat this? Why are they not allowed to do this? Like, why is it only just young people? And it grabs you in. But then when you understand what's going on and you get what the luck of the draw is, then you're kind of out on it, and it really just kind of moves ordinarily. And that's not all bad. It wasn't all bad for me, but I can understand why it would leave somebody like just unfulfilled with where it goes, especially with so much promise. I mean, the cast is great, a great cast of young actors, and it looks very good. Like, I've heard great things about the 4K disc. But as a space drama, there are a lot more options that you can go with that are much better than this film.
I think it was really heartbreaking to me was the fact that I had just watched Ty Sheridan in Joe, if you've ever seen that movie, and he just gives such a gripping performance, and like him and Nicolas Cage both are just so dynamic in that movie. And I have always been a Ty Sheridan fan. I always think that like even when he's in bad movies, he's never a bad actor in those movies. Like he always does the best with what he's given, and it just kind of felt very robotic here. It felt very predictable. I was just so bored for 2 hours that I'm like, man, this is a space movie. It's supposed to be grand. It's supposed to be like, this like, but instead like it's this like philosophical and like teenagers like discovering their sexuality, and I'm just like, you can't even make this interesting. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's all like, most people don't understand that you can have a great idea, but if you don't know how to translate into something that's exciting, entertaining, or deeply impactful to watch, then no one's going to care about it. I mean, it doesn't help that you bring it up and don't do anything interesting with it. I'm completely understandable. Like I said, I was on the brighter side of this, but it's definitely a film that after I watched it, I kind of forgot it, and I'd have no intentions of even watching it ever again.
Yeah. All right, what do you got for number 6, my friend?
So number 6, we have another film that deals with a societal problem with a lack of respect, a lack of comprehension, and just for the sake of being offensive. And it's a film called Surge. Ben Whishaw plays in this. He plays as Q in the Daniel Craig James Bond films. And this is nothing against Ben Whishaw. Ben Whishaw is great in this role. Like, he's best actor good. If this film was even close to even being just average or mediocre. But no, this film is terrible. It's once again a film about an angry white man that doesn't like society. But there's a way that you can do this story. That film was Joker, which was made about two years ago. At least with Joker, you can understand why a guy like that breaks. You can understand with the aspect of mental health, with the aspect of how dire his living conditions were, with everything that's happened to him from a child to who he is now. You can understand why this guy went full blown insane and just decided to create chaos for the sake of chaos. You can understand that. With this film, they try to get you to emphasize with a guy who his annoyances are everyday annoyances for other people. Oh, he has a bad job. Oh, he has annoying neighbors. Oh, his parents, they don't like him. His father never liked him. His mother is a malcontent that just lets anything bad happen to him. Like, it is a film based on increasingly bad things happening to this guy. And when he, in response, decides to commit crimes and go on his tour of self-liberation, you're supposed to be cheering for this man. You're supposed to be happy that he's finally letting go and he's finally being who he wants to be. But what form does that take? This character goes around and robs banks. He goes and rents a $1,000 a night hotel room. And you know what he does? He destroys the sheets. He destroys the covers. He destroys the pillows. He destroys this luxury hotel room just because just because he's angry, just because he's full of rage. He jumps into and crashes a wedding, and these people are looking at him all weird, and he's eating food and doing all of this, just being a straight asshole. But yet we're supposed to love this guy, and we're supposed to be like, yes, he's finding himself. He's fighting against society. No, this is just a film about a misguided and an angry white male that just puts havoc and mayhem out into society, and we're supposed to be like cool that we're supposed to understand it. No, it's a film that is another form of baseless social critique. It's a film that wants you to trick you to thinking that it's saying something serious about a problem, which is maybe, I guess, toxic masculinity. It wants to say something about that, but it doesn't say anything. It's just a film about an angry guy who does angry things to society just because he's angry about everything.
Wow, that sounds like quite an angry movie. I've never even heard of this movie. When did it come out?
It came out in October. I mean, if you go look at his Letterboxd, not a lot of people have seen it. It was somewhat of a film that had promise because of Ben Whishaw being in it. But when you see Ben Whishaw, that's his name. Sorry. But when you see him in this film and what he's surrounded with, then you understand why it's not really getting that much attention and hype like it was. It quickly fell below under the radar. So I'm not surprised you didn't even hear of it, because it quickly fell out of rotation.
That's what I said. Yeah, I like Googled it while you were talking, and like it looks like critics kind of liked it because it's at 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, where like audiences like really didn't like it. I think it holds like a 50 or 55% on critic score or audience score. Sorry.
I thought it would be much lower.
I don't know.
I guess it's just another kind of Joker type film, and I guess the critics fell in love with that because they think that it's a film that's saying something deep, but it's not. I mean, if you really understand the issues and you watch the news and you see what's going on in society, this film doesn't even touch the surface of what's going on.
Yeah, all right, I can respect that. So my number 6 is actually a blockbuster that got delayed by a whole year last year with the pandemic. Say family, because it's F9. Yeah, dear God, I hated this movie. I was so bored by this movie. Let me just say that this movie made me very hesitant to come into not only the Suicide Squad, but to have any type of hype for the Peacemaker series, which John Cena, the Invisible Man, has since kind of brought that back up, brought hype back. I'm really looking forward to Peacemaker next week. But yeah, dude, like this series has like I understand it's ridiculous, and I'm here for the ridiculousness. Like I low-key love just about every movie in this franchise. It's such a fun series, but this latest installment was like the lowest point that they have hit since Tokyo Drift, and I'm just gonna say it is like there was such like intensity and such like there was an intensity that you could have brought to this, like, you know, like brothers and like rivals, and like they just don't ever hit it. Like it never raises to the level that like I wanted it to feel. Like I didn't feel emotionally fulfilled in this movie, and I feel like having this like backstory of spoiler alert, like their father basically dying by one of the brothers, like that enough is enough to where like you should like step up and say something. But like they just everything is like swept under the rug in the third act, where it's like so predictable, where it's just like family, like 6 months of family memes. Like this movie not only earned a spot on my list, but well deserved the flood it got with memes because of it.
I agree with you. F9 is a bad mess. I usually give Fast and Furious a little bit of leniency. I don't really put any tough gloves when it comes to Fast and Furious because these films have turned into just being all about fun, just being all about the ridiculousness. Like, hey, do you want to go to space? Do you want to see cars driving to space? Well, come on to F9. It's like your amusement park. You know, you come to see the ridiculousness and you come to expect it. So no problems there. But when this film wants to get serious, when it wants to tell a story, that's where the bad things start happening. I mean, the way that they bring back Han is so embarrassing. I mean, when I want people to understand this, no spoilers, but I want people to understand this. When you see this film, if you haven't seen it already, and you understand that Han, died in Fast 6, when you understand that and you see the way that they bring this character back in this film, you will want to really stand up and shout at the screen. It is all about suspending logic, just suspending all common sense and just letting things happen. Just, hey, like, we're just going to bring these characters back that were clearly dead, but you know what? We're going to bring them back and resurrect them, and you just have to like it. The acting is terrible. Vin Diesel, is Vin Diesel even trying in this film? Like, it feels like he's just grumbling. Like, every line is just like, we got to do what we can. Family, like it feels like he's tired of talking about family with the way he's acting. And then you have the action. The action is not as exciting as the other entries of the series has been. I feel like the high point of the series when it comes to action was Fast 5, but with this film now it's just all about explosions. Like, a car can be shot with one bullet in its window, it's exploding. It doesn't matter. Like, people still are not getting gas. Like, people are driving these long distances in these cars and they're still not getting gas. People are driving, they're flipping over 20 times. They get out of the car, no scratches. There is a scene where John Cena is literally hang gliding for 10 minutes straight. Like, literally over the streets of London, he's hang gliding for 10 minutes straight. No breaks at all. Like, it is ridiculousness for the sense of being ridiculous, which is the trademark of this series now. But now it's come to a point where it's annoying and you kind of just want to, like, put it in a timeout and just not even talk to it anymore. Just throw it in the dark and just keep it there. Like, once Fast and Furious 10 comes out, stop doing these films. It's over. There's no more juice.
Yeah, I was gonna say they could do a prequel series, but all the prequel you need, it is in this movie, and all of that stuff. Like, there's a point in this movie where, like, I think one of the dumbest things that, and just for context, like, I love meta humor. I really just love tongue-in-cheek stuff, and it's part of the reason that, like, if you listen to our Matrix series, that, like, I actually was entertained by Matrix Resurrections. But this movie, like, there's a scene where, like, Tyrese and Ludacris are having a conversation, and they're like, man, like, we've had, like, all these, like, bad things happen to us, and, like, we should have died by now, right? Like, and it's, like, it's very much, like, breaking of the fourth wall, and I'm just, like, did this just really happen? Like, did they just, like, channel Deadpool? And it's such a cringy moment, but you're so right, man. Like, all the action and, like, to take horror logic, like, people say, like, talk about, like, Hellraiser Bloodline and, like, Jason X, like, and Leprechaun 4. Anytime a franchise goes to space, you've lost it. That's it. You've reached, there's no turning back from that, and I feel like the fact that we see them go to space in this movie, there's nothing else you can say.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do after this? Like, you've already went to space. Like, where is the new frontier? I don't think there is none.
I will say, though, for as much crap as I hated about this movie, how they actually got to space was rather entertaining, and how they tied it back to Tokyo Drift was also pretty has my respect, at least in that regards. But, like, this movie was, like, just 2.5 hours of just, like, put me to sleep, man. Like, I would put this on for, like, my cats if I wanted them to sleep.
Hey,
bye.
You know what was funny? This film is like 158 minutes, but my girlfriend's daughter, her 7-year-old brain loved this film. Like, she was excited. She was energized. Anytime she saw a fast car on the screen, she was like, wow, and she enjoyed it. So I think that is the one silver lining I got out of this film.
That's fine, man. Look, as long as there's an audience for it, I'm fine with it. But I'm just not here for this, man. I'm hoping that Fast 10 is going to be that's done. And to your point about him, like Vin Diesel not like really acting anymore, he just kind of grumbles everything, but he enunciates family. That's the only word he knows how to say in his contracts anymore.
Yeah, I think that is the word that he is known for now. Like, if I ever meet him, I just want to hear him say family.
Just be like, caress your family. What do you got for number 5?
So number 5, this film, well, given that on Letterboxd only 532 people have seen it, and it was released in October, I'm guessing you haven't heard this either. But it is a cartoon remake of Night of the Living Dead called Night of the Animated Dead.
Yeah.
So pretty much this is a shot-for-shot remake of Night of the Living Dead, except that it's in cartoon form. But the soullessness of whoever worked on this, the lack of passion, and just the sheer cheap cash grab maneuvers that are taken in this film is so disgusting that after I turned this film off, I immediately went and looked at my Night of the Living Dead Criterion on my physical media collection. I looked it in the face for 10 minutes. So I was like, hey, I still remember. You're a great film. And it's like, this night is, it pretty much, there's no magic in this film. Like, the voice actors don't care. The animation is not even, it doesn't even look as good as like Minecraft. Like, you have characters that are literally walking in like they're doing the robot dance. And then you have this copious amount of blood that they add to it. Like, they took Night of the Living Dead and just added more gore and color to it. That's all they did. And it's like, what? Like, I expected for this to be something different. I expected them to take this story and do something different with it. Like, maybe add in new characters or maybe add in a new location. I would have been fine with that. Because this film is already public property. And it's in the public domain. So people can do what they want with it. But this film is a front. It spits on the ring that the original film has on his hand. Like, when you have these incredible moments in the original film, such as when we finally see the character of Ben, a black man, in a 1968 film that is a leading character and nothing is mentioned ever about his race. And then you have this terror of seeing these zombies, characters we had never seen on the screen before, eating intestines, moving slow, not dying until you shoot them in the head. Like, all that mystique, all that's gone in this film. Is nothing but just people going through these locations and zombies being killed in the most gruesome ways possible. And it's boring as hell. 70 minutes is a short time for a film, but literally I wanted all the 70 minutes back after watching this. It is a disgrace. It is a pure embarrassment. And I wish for no one to see this film.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Wow, if you're going to talk that way about your number 5, I am so interested to hear what you have for 421. I did not get around to seeing this movie. I know about it. I read about it on one of the many horror sites I follow, and I just have not heard anyone talk good about this movie, and it takes a lot to make me want to actually watch an animated adult movie that is not DC related. But I'm just gonna be straight honest with you. Like, I watched Scorpion's Revenge, the Mortal Kombat movie, on like a pure whim, and absolutely loved it. I think it's the best Mortal Kombat movie we've ever gotten. I haven't watched Battle of the Realms yet, but it's just its care and passion about the property and like the story and the characters. It's just really well. It's a bloody, fun, entertaining time. That said, man, like that just really breaks my heart about this movie because like George A. Romero was such a pioneer of the zombie genre, and to hear that his legacy has been like defiled in this kind of way, especially like with what you're talking about, like this is not only this movie is what give us our modern day concept of what a zombie is. Not only that, it put a black man in a leading role in a time where you didn't see that in cinema. And on top of that, I mean, it's such a simple, elegant movie that for even being a horror movie, it feels like you can, uh, you know, move and do stuff that you can't normally do within this genre because it's gotten so overpopulated by we just need zombies, more blood, more brains, and what makes that such an elegant first film is that a lot of that stuff didn't matter, didn't need it, and to hear that they kind of got away from that with this new animated interpretation is really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's reeks of people who know that this is a famous film and they just wanted to jump on the bandwagon of its legacy and just take a poop all over it. That's what it feels like. And I like how you said that if I'm throwing the vitriol for the fifth film, then yeah, it's going to get much, much darker when we get to these next four films. So go ahead with your number 5, bro.
My number 5 was your number 7, and it is Tom and Jerry. Like we've already previously talked about, like this movie, it was just uninspiring. It was really painful. All of the, uh, all of the just everything associated with this movie is like 90 minutes of just pure boredom. And to your point about there being a plot, Colin Jost from Saturday Night Live is trying to get married. Like that's the main plot, and like the hotel is like dying off, and they need like the publicity in order to get it. But I mean, yeah, dude, like it's just. That's it, man. Like I think we talked about this. Like there's no reason to like retread it. It's just it's garbage, man. Like if your intended audience isn't even gonna laugh, like why bother? And I think that they try to do this just to kind of like, because if you notice, like every 20 years they come out and they're just like, oh, we're gonna do another Tom and Jerry movie, just to kind of like remind people that it's a thing. And it's like, dude, like if you're gonna do that, like do what the Muppets or Looney Tunes do, and like create a series like every 4 or 5 years, and like reintroduce your audience to it that way, not just cold turkey throwing them in the bathwater.
Yeah, I mean, what often gets lost in these new remakes is like, I mean, the lack of respect to the original creators of these characters. Like, you have to understand that Tom and Jerry, it was something that wasn't done before Tom and Jerry. I mean, it was something that was created by these creators with passion, with heart, with ingenious ideas, and that's the reason why these characters have lasted as long as they have. And for these new creators to come by and just do what they will with these characters without the amount of respect, reverence, or even attention to doing the best version of these characters, it makes you mad. I mean, it does nothing but make you mad as a person who enjoys watching films. It's disgusting in a sense. Not disgusting, but just blasphemy.
Yeah, and I'm also gonna say this. Like, I went to the theater just kind of like a joke to myself to go see Clifford, and honestly, I can say that Clifford was like leaps and bounds way better than this movie. So if you're gonna watch any family movie from 2021, make it Clifford the Big Red Dog, because it's entertaining, it's heartfelt, and it feels like a throwback to like 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s humor in its like delivery, but yet it still is able to maintain a lot of the modern feel of family films.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we already have pretty much stated. I mean, this film is just a gigantic mess, and it really is a disrespect to anything. If you love to be entertained, then this is not your film. It's the clear opposite.
Yeah. All right, man. What you got for number 4?
So number 4, I have another property that got disgracefully brought back to life, and that's Home Sweet Home Alone. It's a film that deals with, which is another unnecessary sequel to the first 2 great Home Alone films that we got in the 90s. And it's a cheap trick to try and bring back people in by nostalgia. I mean, this is a film that takes fun at itself by talking about how the new remakes just don't get the soul right, of their original creation. And this film is a part of that. I mean, the kid that we follow in this film is a douche. He is just a douche. I'm sorry, but the thing that made the first 2 Home Alone films awesome was that Macaulay Culkin, Kevin was somebody that we saw in ourselves. We could understand Kevin when he was in the hotel having fun, with room service and stuff. We could see that. We could be that. He was a general kid, easygoing, that got left home alone, and it's not his fault. But with this film, this kid decides that he's going to punish his parents by being a bad kid, and just by staying home and falling asleep in a BMW in a garage, which is weird because then the next scene shows that the family is going on vacation and they just never happen to stop in the garage to look for their kid. And also, this film feels like it was written in the late 2000s with all of these cell phone ringtone era jokes that are in here. Like, literally, there's a scene where the dad is trying to get back into his house. And he asks his kid, what's the code? And one of his kids says, yo, mama. And I was like, that was funny in 2001, not in 2021. And then we have this wealthy neighborhood. And the reason that the kid is now, the robbers he's fighting against, is people who are trying to get at this kid because they thought he stole a doll. And then they realized that, oh no, maybe we're the evil people and not this kid. And then you had this heartwarming message about coming together during the holidays. But it's ruined because this film is just not funny. It's not funny at all. It has some weird special effects. All the acting is terrible. The comedy, the jokes, the punchlines, nothing is done well in this film. Nothing's done. And I'm kind of glad that this was not released in theaters. I'm kind of glad that this was a Disney Plus exclusive because, once again, it's an affront to Home Alone. I mean, we didn't need a Home Alone 3. We didn't need a Home Alone 4. We didn't need all of the many Home Alone sequels that have been made since the 90s. And this is another example of why they should put this series to bed. No one cares about Home Alone anymore unless they're watching the older films. I would recommend you watch Home Alone 1, watch Home Alone 2, but don't even watch Home Alone 3. Just don't watch any of the other sequels.
Yeah, so like there are certain things that happen in film history that is quite literally lightning in a bottle. Like you will never be able to reproduce that no matter how hard you try. And there are so many movies that have unnecessary sequels that are either direct to video or direct to streaming nowadays. And it sucks to hear that because Archie Yates, who is the main kid in this, Max, he was in Jojo Rabbit, and like he's such a minor part in that role, but I really liked him in Jojo Rabbit. I thought that I was excited for the prosperity of him being able to kind of do a movie by himself, kind of lead that. But like, man, I actively avoided this thing because of all the bad movie I heard, and I just didn't have a desire to watch this movie. So number 4, I dodged a bullet here.
You dodged a pretty big bullet. I actually congratulate you, and I would give you a handshake for doing that.
It's just like whenever we see each other in person, it'll be like, here's that handshake from that top 10 we did a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to remember. I'm going to commit this to memory right now.
Well, I guess while we're on the topic of family movies, here is my number 4. It's another family movie, and that is The Addams Family 2.
Oh.
The Addams Family, the first one, was like, I didn't like it on my first viewing, and I really liked it on my second viewing. It's like one of those movies that had to grow on me. But this movie just feels soulless. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. We brought up Chloe Grace Moretz earlier, when we talked about Tom and Jerry. Like, she's just kind of making like really questionable like career decisions. Shadow in the Clouds was another film that came out last year that a lot of people hated, and this is another one that like I just couldn't get behind. I love the idea of being able to take the Addams Family out of the you know, the spooky mansion that they're most famous for and throwing them into like a Caribbean setting. And this movie feels like they were trying to make a gothic version of a Goofy movie, and it just did not land under any circumstances. Like, the jokes were just dull. There was like no heart in this movie. Like, it just doesn't even feel like this was a Addams Family movie. And probably what's worse is that it feels like it's supposed to be like a Despicable Me sequel with the Addams Family. Like, it just kind of feels like they MGM was just kind of like, copy the homework from Despicable Me 2 and just throw the Addams Family in it. Like, this was probably one of my worst experiences watching a movie this year.
You know, what's funny is that I have never been interested in any of these Addams Family animated films they've came out with in the last few years. Like, I consider me a black sheep, but I've never even really been a big fan of the Addams Family altogether. I've just never really found what was cool or entertaining to watch about them. I mean, I understand that it's dark, morbid humor, and dark comedy is my favorite, but I've never really had a inkling or a want to really jump into the Addams Family. But judging by these animated films, I mean, you see by the animation style that they are trying to be like a Despicable Me. Like, like even the dad kind of looks like just a shorter Olaf. That's what he looks like. I understand what you mean, especially with, I mean, animated movies. I mean, unless it's made by Pixar or by these Lakia or like these other, you know, indie studios, you know, they're actually going to put some care and some love and some heart into these stories. Unless it's that, if you're getting something from a mainstream studio, I mean, it's going to be a really big amount of misses before you really get to a hit. And I guess it's because kids are easy to entertain, so there's not much creativity or not much like work that needs to be done for these films. But nah, it could be done better. Just because you're an animated film and you're catering to kids doesn't mean you have to rest and just do the easiest thing. What happened to just effort? What happened to that?
I doesn't like really take a whole lot of effort because, like, again, going back to the original animated movie, like there's that level of like weirdness, but also remaining modern. So you have the homage to the spooky that the Addams Family are famous for, but also at the same time you're able to also have inside the the very modern sensibility to appeal to it, and none of that stuff just appeals to it. Like the third act of this movie, like the big reveal of the antagonist, quite literally feels like the same exact motive from Despicable Me 2. So I don't even think they tried with this one, man. Like, it's just it. I don't know. I was very disappointed, very let down by this.
All right, so I guess let's go into number 3. So number 3 for me is a film called Karen. Yes, a film called Karen. And guess what it's about?
I forgot about this movie.
It's about a Karen. Tyron Manning plays this white woman who lives in this nice neighborhood, and all of a sudden she sees that a black family is moving in next door. And this neighborhood is already diverse, but she seems to just have a problem with the black family. It's a film that jumps onto the bandwagon of the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, the protests, you know, the George Floyd, everything that's been happening over the last couple of years. This film is trying to condense itself and try to add some importance, try to add some solidarity with that movement, but it doesn't do a good job at all. I mean, it's poorly made. Like, there are scenes in this film where it's raining. You can clearly see that it's raining, and the characters are not getting wet. the rain looks fake as hell. There was one scene where a guy had his window open, and it's clearly rain effects are showing, but no rain is hitting his window. Like, even the bit of realism is not there. You also have these bits of dialogue that feels like they're lifted from Instagram comments. There's a line in this film where literally a guy said, "So there's a Karen whose name is Karen," and it's like, oh, I see you've been doing a lot of meme homework. Good job. There's also the idea of using Black trauma as a plot device. It never is a good thing to do that. I'm not in the business of supporting films that use trauma porn to sell you a message. There's no need to do that. Let me tell you, this film reminds me of a film that was released in 2020 called Antebellum. You remember that film where the lady was in slavery, but then it finds out that she wasn't really in slavery, but she was on this theme park that replicated slavery. It felt like this Karen film felt like that was that. It felt like, hey, you know what? You know what's a good idea? You see all those films with all those white women and stuff, and they're just being just like despicable, and they're being racist and everything. This will turn out to be a good film. No, because I tell you what, the Karen phenomenon is getting kind of old. Like, now I'm seeing people use it now for any kind of incident. It ruins its lasting power, and it doesn't really solve anything. When it comes to the racism problem, this film is just parody on top of parody, but it wants to be serious. It wants to be, something that wants to be in the same league as a Malcolm X or a Watchmen or something like that. But it's not. It's terrible. I mean, no one's trying in this film. It's just bottom of the barrel, horrible. And you're better off just watching a Karen Public Freakout compilation on YouTube instead of watching this.
Wow, yeah, I remember actually seeing the poster for this, and I thought this was like legitimately like a joke. And then I remember like seeing people post on the internet about watching it, and I was just like, aha. Because this was a BET like movie, right? Was this like a made for TV movie or for their streaming service?
It was made for the streaming service, but hey, I wouldn't be surprised if this was something made for BET. I bet you this is going to be on BET within the next year. They're going to have constant reruns in this film. It looks straight up like a BET TV film. Good comparison.
I'm so sorry for the viewers that are going to tune in for that. Yeah, dude, like, this reminds me, like, I remember seeing the poster for this, and you remember a couple years ago when KFC decided they were going to do that short film with Lifetime about making the Colonel sexy with Mario Lopez?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what this poster reminds me of. Like, I thought it was fake until I watched it, and I totally forgot this was a thing until you brought it up. So I'm so sorry that you had to endure this.
Yeah, I mean, I did it because I was morbidly curious. Sometimes I like to take a gander at these films that I know is going to be terrible. Sometimes you gotta have fun with it. You gotta have fun through the surfer. You have to laugh through the pain, and I did that a lot. This film has a lot of unintentionally funny moments that I would actually recommend for somebody to watch, just to get a good laugh at how bad it is. It's one of those so bad, but it's entertaining to see how bad it is.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it just, when you talk about it, like, this just sounds troublesome and cringy, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very cringy. I mean, there are a lot of moments where they're like, oh my God, do you see how bad this woman is? She is so a Karen. And do you see this Black family? Like, oh my goodness, like, you never even understand what this Black family even does. Like, the one character that is fleshed out is Karen. The Black family that we're supposed to be on the side of, they're never fleshed out. You never understand what the guy does. You don't know what kind of job he has. You don't even know what the woman, the wife of the wife does. They just say that she's like a famous blogger. And it's like, well, what do you blog about? And they never show what she does. So it's like, okay, I'm supposed to be cheering for these characters to make it out alive against this Karen. But yet I don't know anything about them. And I mean, you have to literally watch it for yourself to like see those unintentionally funny moments, because I bet you're gonna have a ball with it.
I mean, look, I come from the horror background, so like I don't imagine that I won't have fun with this movie. It just, I don't know. Like, after doing some of the research that I've done for myself, and with like Black history. It's just kind of like, but maybe as a horror fan, I need to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely do.
So my number 3 actually comes from the country of Indonesia, and this was a Shudder exclusive. This was a remake, and this is The Queen of Black Magic. Basically, the story tells of families that basically come together that were raised in this orphanage. They all come together, and someone like, I think that the house mother or house father, they die basically, so they're like coming together to kind of like clean out the orphanage, but like also at the same time like read the will, and kind of they encounter this like haunted spirit that haunts the orphanage now. And I mean, on paper, this sounds like a truly great and fantastic movie. This movie was, man, like this movie was so boring. Stock characters, just the bland, like a bland narrative, but also at the same time, like just all of like the supernatural elements of this like are so cruddy. Like it's so bad to see just how some of the visual effects in this movie translate. And like I understand that like budgets for like these streaming services, especially smaller services like Shudder and like uh you know, probably not going to have like the best effects. I understand that and I get that. But man, like this movie was just, it was an hour 40 minutes of just like, are we almost done? Because like I'd found myself that like I couldn't care about these characters, I couldn't care about this curse, and like supernatural like exorcism movies are among my favorites to watch in the horror genre, and this one just did not satisfy any of those itches.
Wow. I haven't heard of this film. I mean, from the title, it sounds interesting. Like the Queen of Black Magic. It sounds like something that is very mystical and is going to be dealing with like, maybe a witch story that can go a little bit like farther ahead with the concept. But yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I haven't heard this film, but sounds like a huge disappointment. I mean, especially with a title like that. With a title like that, you got to rock it. You got to rock it with a title like that, and it looks like it did.
Dude, yeah, like, and the poster for it is like this really gnarly, like orange, like red tint to it, with like a broken skull, and, like a snake crawling out of it, and, like a woman like holding the skull, and like it just looks so gnarly. And I was really excited to like sit down and watch this movie, and I had gotten through maybe like as I was entering into like the last act, I was just like so bored, and I was like, dude, like I don't care about these characters anymore. Like I was half tempted to turn it off, but because like I was reviewing it like for victims, like I was like, I gotta stay with it, you know. Let me just see it through to the end. But yeah, this was among definitely one of the worst movies of this year, and one of the most disappointing movies of the year too.
A shame.
Yeah. So what do you got for number 2?
Well, often when we're on this podcast, Josh, I never get angry when we talk about films. Like, even if a film is bad, you're never going to see me really get a rise out of me for a film being bad, because at least the people behind the film thought they are doing something memorable. They thought they are putting their best foot forward, and I can appreciate that. This film, though, is offensive in all shapes and sizes. It's called Two Distant Strangers, and it's a short film. It's the only short film on this list. It's only 22 minutes, but I tell you what, 22 minutes that are frustrating, that are just very disrespectful to the victims of police brutality and to the unarmed Black men and Black women and Black children that have been killed. This film is supposed to be a memorial to them. It deals with a guy who is essentially a young Black man who's living in New York, who's essentially dealing with a Groundhog Day type situation where he walks out of this girl's apartment that he just met last night, and he keeps getting gunned down by white police officers. You would think with that concept, okay, maybe it's telling us about how, as a Black man, you constantly have to fear leaving out your door every day, which is something I have lived through. But this film doesn't do it takes that situation that's supposed to be serious, that is traumatic, that is something that causes a lot of people to have PTSD, something that has killed innocent people. They take the subject of police brutality and they make a comedy out of it. There's literally a scene where during one of the loops, the guy that we're following, this young black guy played by Joey Badass, who does a great job in this role. Joey Badass is not only a great rapper, he's a great actor. But this film doesn't any favors. But his character talks to the white police officer, and they're pretty much having jokes about, hey, like, when are you going to come and like kill me? He's like, well, man, this is like my job, and everything. So, but hey, maybe we can try to figure out how to get you out of this. Like, no, police brutality is not something to make fun of. Black trauma is not something to trivialize. It's not something that you can just glide over with a careful sugary paintbrush and just leave it as nothing. Like, no. It's a serious topic and it should be treated as such. But these two filmmakers, they decided to make a mockery of it. There's a scene where the character during one of the loot gets killed. His blood pools and forms the shape of the continent of Africa. I'm not kidding you. That is really a scene in this film where a guy's blood is shaped into the form of the continent of Africa. And it's supposed to be powerful. It's supposed to be something that's like fight the power. It's supposed to be something that's like empower black people, but it doesn't. And they have the audacity, they have the rouge to list out all of the names of black police brutality victims over the last 10 years and act it and say, we're paying tribute to you. You're not paying tribute to them. You're staying their memory when you're making stories like this that trivialize what these people went through and what their families are still going through, mourning the people, their relatives, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, people that they're still honoring and trying to get over that they have lost to something as random and tragic as violence and racism. This film can go F itself. I'm not going to say the F word, but this film can really go F itself.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this movie, and I was like looking it up while you do it. It's on Netflix, but yeah, dude, like this just sounds like why, like especially like if you're going to like go. I mean, we talked about it a lot, but like a lot of these movies seem to like have these like early 2000s like comedy edge to it, or like satire where it was like it was okay to be edgy and like make these comments, but like in 2021, like that stuff doesn't work. Like, and even going back and revisiting some of like those like prejudice jokes from the early 2000s, like they hit differently now. Like they're hard to watch. Like you feel dirty after you watch it, or go through that scene, and like to endure 30 minutes of this this satire, like just sounds like not only like a painful experience, but also like the fact that people are making it like just breaks my heart.
And you know what the big punchline of all of this is that this film won an Academy Award. It won for Best Short Film last year at the Academy Awards, Best Short Film. And yeah, it was a film that was released on Netflix during like the early months of 2021. But it was supposed to come out in 2020, but it got dropped onto Netflix in the early months, and that's where you could find it if you want to watch it. But yeah, this film won Best Short Film and I guess that even gave more of these creators the sense that they did something right. But you didn't do something right with this film. I mean, this film is a mockery of what it means to make a film about racism, white supremacy, police brutality. It's not important. It doesn't add anything. It's essentially a Groundhog Day type film that doesn't leave you with any answers and no solutions to the problems that African Americans are facing in the world today.
Man, all right, that's kind of jarring to me that it won an Oscar, but I don't always agree with the Oscars anymore, so there's that. Mm-hmm. So my number 2 is going to be riding high on the hype right now with Tom Holland and Spider-Man Far From Home, because it is the flip side of his 2021 career, and that is Chaos Walking. This movie visually was awesome. Like visually, it's beautiful. But this movie basically is like, to just kind of sum up the plot very quick, it is this like futuristic planet where like some disease has wiped out all of females, and all the males have been infected with this like thing that like lets you see what each other is thinking. And then Daisy Ridley crashes to Earth, and basically this is the first time that all of these guys have encountered a woman, and she sides with Tom Holland to kind of like take down like this like big coup. And again, so much of the top 5 movies, I will say this, like, this movie, it tries to be like really haughty and like tries to be like very thoughtful and philosophical, and I think it's really great. There are some genuinely funny moments in this. Tom Holland is very awkward. Daisy Ridley is very awkward. Awkward chemistry does not make for a good movie. It makes for an awkward one. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like, this one was such a bust for me. It's such a visual delight, but it's absolutely like just 2 hours of boredom here. And much like Voyagers, this movie just does what Voyagers does, only worse.
Wow, I am coming in from the complete opposite side on this. I actually enjoyed my time with Chaos Walking. I thought the concept of, like, you know, these characters being able to hear other voices and, you know, where you were as far as like how much power you had was all about if you could keep your voice silent. That's what gave you like that's what makes you unique. That's what gave you a difference in the society. So, I mean, maybe if I went back to it, I probably would see the issues you're talking about. I don't particularly remember it. I mean, I'm finding it hard to really even gather much details from it because after I saw it, I kind of like saw it and just kind of forgot about it. I mean, Tom Holland's in this. I mean, there's a great cast in this film. And I mean, it's not like they do a bad job, but the story, and from what I heard from people who have read the novel, that this film doesn't do any justice to that. And it's very confusing at times. Like, if you don't have subtitles, you're going to have a hard time following this film because there are scenes where just voices are just colliding everywhere. And it's like, okay, do I have to listen to this? Is this important to the plot? What's happening here? Like, it is all over the place, messy. I will give it that. And I had a hard time following it, and you know, without watching any subtitles.
Yeah, you mentioned the cast, like Matt's Middleton, I think that's how you say that. And Nick Jonas are both in this. David Oyelowo is in this, and David Oyelowo actually might be my favorite part of this movie. But you just proved my point right there. Like, you had fun with it, but it's forgettable. And like, this to me just feels like very like stock CGI. I think that the thought processes for this movie are great, but again, it comes down to the execution of what you're watching. And for me, the execution of this movie was just very, very poorly delivered.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I know a lot of people were looking forward to it and expecting it to be this grand thing and another vehicle for Tom Holland, but it came and it went. Grand opening, grand closing, just as quick.
Yeah. All right, so before we get to number ones, my question for you is, do you have any honorable mentions that you'd like to throw out there for this year?
Yes, I have a few honorable mentions that I would like to give attention to. I don't want anybody to forget about these films either. There is one film called Outside the Wire on Netflix. It has Anthony Mackie. That's the new Captain America in the MCU. And, you know, it's a film that is essentially about these soldiers that are in this new kind of battlefield. And Anthony Mackie is playing this half human, half robot that is supposed to guide this guy across the minefield to get to a place where he can dismantle nuclear weapons. And it's a film that's kind of cool. It has some little bit of nice action effects, some little nice scenes here and there, but it is very flat. And the cinematography is ugly, it's dark, grimy, but it's not gritty in a sense where it's like documentary realistic type. It's grimy in the sense that no one did any color shading or any like kind of visual grading in post-production. It's a Netflix action film, so that should already tell you about the quality of it and what it's going to turn out to be. But yeah, that is a bad film. There's another film called Jolt, and hey, Josh, this is another film that was released on Amazon this year, featuring Kate Beckinsale as this woman who has uncontrollable anger. Like, she is a woman, she has a genetic disease that makes her unable to control her anger. She's always full of rage, and she has to have these constant injections of cortisol into her system to keep her from like overdosing or dying. And the concept sounds great, but what it eventually turns into is a generic action film. And, you know, some of the worst villains you'll see all year tries to take itself seriously, and it doesn't do that. Kate Beckinsale is good, but what is her character? Who knows? It's another forgettable Amazon original film. And the last I want to give to is The Kingsmen. I saw this on the week before Christmas last year. And let me just tell you, if you expect to come into The Kingsmen expecting the same fun, arcadey, and just whimsical sense of the first two Kingsmen films, you're not going to see it. I mean, do you have a poster of that, of The Kingsmen?
I do. They were giving it out free at my theater. I haven't seen the movie yet.
Oh, I thought that this is going to be another The Hunt situation where you were like, The Kingsmen is actually one of the best, and I was
Nah. I haven't seen it yet.
No, it almost like wants to be a 1917. It wants to be a war drama more than an action film. And when the action does come, it's not very fun to watch. I mean, there's a lot of good stunt work. There are some interesting choices they do with the stunt choreography, like they do in all Kingsman films, but it more wants to teach you a historical lesson rather than having fun with you. And it's very boring to watch. Like, I honestly should have took a pillow to the theater when I saw it, because it would have got me in for a good nap. Those are just a few of the honorable mentions I have this year.
All right. Well, I will throw out three of my honorable mentions as well, and my first one is going to be old. M. Night Shyamalan. For some reason I go through these like phases where I'm just like, M. Night. This is going to be the one that brings him back, and you know, I'm always like hopeful for like that other split, and like Glass wasn't necessarily a terrible movie, and this one I think had good ideas but really terrible execution. So this one just kind of was like really bland to me. I wanted to like it a lot more than I did, and I brought up Amazon, and it wouldn't be worth a bad movie list if I didn't have an Amazon movie on here, and this one's going to come with Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, which I think you were a big fan of. I love Michael B. Jordan. He is one of my favorite actors working in the business today, but I am not an action movie fan. Like, I have a lot of fun with them. I'm just not the audience for this. I was really bored and let down by this one, though. But that said, I will probably still watch the Rainbow Six movie if it gets greenlit, just because I want to see what he does. And my last honorable mention is going to come from Shudder, and it's going to be A Nightmare Wakes. This is a biopic of how Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein in a toxic relationship. And what I'm just going to say is just go watch the Professor M and the Wonder Woman movie, because it's the same exact concept, and that movie is way better. Much better. So, what you got for number one, though, my friend?
Well, when I saw this film back at the end of February this year, I knew that this was going to be the undisputed number one worst film of the year, and I knew that nothing else was going to beat it. And I will explain to you why. And it's the United States versus Billie Holiday. This film was released on Hulu at the end of Black History Month. It features a Academy Award nominated performance from Andrea Day. I have no qualms with her performance. She does a good job. The problem I have with it is that it's a POS film. And let me explain to you why. Lee Daniels, the director of this film, Lee Daniels, if you look at his career, has made a living off of profiting off of Black trauma. He's made a living off of it. Every one of his films deals with just these Black characters who are, they're either addicted to drugs, or they're being abused, or their bodies are being assaulted on, or people are being raped, or it deals with all the bad things that happen to Black people. He has made a living off of it in his films. And this is another one of them. This is not a story about the great Billie Holiday, who, I remind you, Billie Holiday is one of the greatest musicians of all time, one of the greatest singers of all time. Billie Holiday is a hero. She is a hero to me. She is definitely a hero to my auntie, who is a musician. She loves Billie Holiday. She had a poster of Billie Holiday. She had Billie Holiday vinyl records, and I grew up listening to them. So Billie Holiday is a very important person in the African-American community. But what this film does is that it only shows a person like Billie Holiday being abused, being beaten, being just used as a sex object, just all of these things, all the bad things that happen to Billie Holiday. That's what's in this film. Like, it is disgusting how they treat a person of this importance. Like, Billie Holiday is an African-American hero. Like, what does it say about us when we don't even do right by our heroes? Like, when Spike Lee made a film like Malcolm X, he studied everything about Malcolm X. He did everything he could to get the portrayal of Malcolm X right, him and Denzel. When you see a film like Black Panther that can show you that Black characters can live in a vibrant environment, they can be happy, they can be heroes, they can be these characters that we care about. And then you have films like this that do nothing but just show the problems that Black people go through, and they call it a film, they call it a drama. Like, no, this is 2021. We should be far from just showing films about Black people going through heavy stuff, going through sadness. Like, why can't we show Black people in fantasy films, science fiction, romance films? Like, where are those films at? But no, films like this get greenlit because most of these people know that there is profit in Black trauma, and it's sickening to think about. And so this film, I already knew by the time I watched it that it was going to be the worst film of the year because of how much they disrespected the great Billie Holiday. And also how this film, like, there's a scene in this film where they show a person taking a shot, injection of heroin, and being thrown into a flashback to see where Billie's childhood was in the form of a heroin rush. I mean, I'm not going to say any more about this film because it's just so disgusting and disrespectful.
I totally forgot about this film, and I remember when this movie came out, like I was kind of interested in watching it, and then I just remember talking to you the weekend it came out, and you're like, "Bro, just don't do it. Save your time. Like it's trash." Like, and full context for like Celeste and I's relationship is like Celeste is probably one of the most positive people I know when it comes to film. And so to hear him talk that way about a movie, like, it's jarring to me. And also, I don't know, man. Like, I think you said it right when you were talking about like that movie, Antrum. Is that something it was called? Antrum Bella or something like that.
Oh, Antebellum, yeah.
Antebellum, yeah. When that movie came out, and you were talking about like how how long do we have to kind of keep seeing Black people play these stereotypes? And like watching something like The Photograph this year, or like Malcolm X, and like even like Do the Right Thing, like you see these groundbreaking films, and it's like, man, why don't we have more of these in modern cinema? And it's just kind of sad that it feels like for every step forward a filmmaker takes, then you have a movie like Billie Holiday that steps it back 3 steps.
Yeah, I mean, we could even get just a regular Billie Holiday story. We had to focus on her being the victim, which is true. She was the victim of, being followed, being investigated by the FBI, being just like tortured by, you know, these people following her and trying to ruin her career and everything. Yet, yes, this all happened. Yes, she did have relationships with abusive men. Yes, but the beauty, the grace, the talent, her presence as an artist, you don't get many of those scenes in there. All you get is just these dramatic scenes that are just nothing but just adding on more and more and more negativity. And I don't want to see Billie Holiday that way. I want to see Billie Holiday being treated with respect. I want to see Billie Holiday get an accurate depiction. I want to see Billie Holiday being, you know, lifted up and for other people, for new generations to be able to follow and understand. And this film doesn't do it. If anybody wants to learn anything about Billie Holiday, go watch Lady Sings the Blues. It's a 1970s film featuring Diana Ross as the role of Billie Holiday. And that does a much better job of being a biopic about Billie Holiday. And you can also go and watch a Ken Burns documentary called Jazz. It was released in 2001. There's 10 parts to it, but many of the parts deal with Billie Holiday. Perfect, great, brilliant source about Billie Holiday. But I kid you not, just stay away from this film. Stop letting Lee Daniels, a guy like Lee Daniels, make these films featuring our African American heroes, because he doesn't respect them. He doesn't do them any service. He's all in the business of providing Black trauma to be put on the big screen.
It's really heartbreaking. So my number one is going to be also as heartbreaking, and it is, before I reveal what my number one is, I just want to say that, like, as I said in the beginning, the list that you're hearing on this episode is a little bit skewed because a lot of my top 10 actually was like independent films that people didn't have. And if you guys listened to our Creature Feature weekend that Alan and I did back in August, I said a statement about a movie we covered on that one called Bigfoot, Path of the Beast, that I said would probably remain my number one, and there's no redeemable qualities about it. But it's not the number one that I'm making on this list because I went through, it had to be on either streaming service or it had to go to theaters. And back in August, this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this for this one. This movie struck an exclusive deal with Regal Cinemas to have their movie played in their theater exclusively ahead of their festival circuit run in the fall. And I think they played on there for like 2 weeks. So none of my local Regals played it. It looked like a really awesome twist, a horror twist on, you know, time loops, and I finally got to see it when I covered it for Salem Horror Fest back in October, and that is a movie called 645. This movie, there's like next to no redeemable qualities about it. It sits right now at the top of this list for a good reason. It's boring. Basically, a couple decides to get away after, as a last resort, to kind of resow the magic of their relationship after the husband has boyfriend cheated on the girlfriends. Very cliche. But they get stuck in this getaway is basically Groundhog's Day for them, and so they keep reliving the same day and being murdered by this random guy day in and day out. No matter what they do, they always get murdered, and it gets to a point where it becomes predictable, boring, and this movie, it just runs on way too long, and the ending is one of the most unsatisfactory endings that I've seen this year, and so that is why this movie is on my top of my list at number one, because as I said in our Salem Horror Fest episode, look, the nightmare of having to watch this movie is a nightmare on itself. Like, the characters are going through their own nightmare. I'm going through my own watching this movie.
Oh, those are the worst. You know, it's a film that wants to make you feel one way, but you end up feeling another way, and it's like not the intended feeling, but it's the feeling that you just get. I mean, there were other films like last year, I think, when I went to go and see films like The Grudge or films like I'm trying to think of the one film that had the kid from Stranger Things in it.
The Turning.
The Turning, like films like that, where they want to put you into these worlds that are supposed to give you nightmares, but the nightmares that you're experiencing these films. I mean, I just went to IMDb and I looked at the description of it, and it says, "What if one of the best days of your life suddenly turned into your very worst nightmare, and what if you were forced to relive that same day again and again?" So it's nothing new. I mean, this is a concept that's been done in many different genres across different decades. I'm pretty sure it's probably been done much better.
Yeah, I would just suggest to skip this one and go nostalgic. Watch Back to the Future. So much better.
Yes, Back to the Future is a classic.
So I think it's gonna do it. But I am curious, since we are talking about ending last year's circuit, what is your most anticipated movie for this year?
Wow, I guess if I had to say, if there is one that I'm just dead set looking forward to, it would have to be the Batman. I ended up seeing the trailer before a film I saw last year. I was trying to not see it because I usually have a rule about not watching trailers, but that rule gets like expunged when I'm in the theater because I really don't like to cover my eyes. But I saw the trailer, and I think Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz,
Andy Serkis, Colin Farrell.
Yes, I think all of these people, they're going to bring a sense of epicness and a sense of weight with the Batman story. Nothing like we've ever seen before. Like maybe Dark Knight, but I think this has a sense of that grunge and that year one feel to the Batman story. And year one is one of my favorite stories in the Batman universe. So I'm all set for it, man. I think it's going to be excellent. And I usually don't say that about films. So I try to keep a clear head, but I'm just wildly excited for the new Batman film.
Yeah, I'm same. It's not my most anticipated film of the year, but it's like for me, like I'm here for it. Like I have been championing Matt Reeves long before like he was ever in the running. Like we were talking back when we were still doing news, and it was like, you know, Ben Affleck's going to step down. Who would you want to see directed? And it's like Matt Reeves would be the perfect guy to do it because, I mean, you look at what he was able to accomplish with Planet of the Apes in 2 movies, and like just what he's been able to do between like, you know, that and Cloverfield and like a lot of the other movies that he's done. And it's just like, man, like this guy knows what he's doing, and like this is the guy that I want to see take over the Batman.
Yes, Matt Reeves has proven himself that he can handle stories like this. I mean, Planet of the Apes series, the new trilogy, is probably one of the most underrated and greatest film trilogies we've ever had. And I know it's weird to say that something is the greatest and it's underrated in the same sentence, but not a lot of people talk about those Planet of the Apes films. I don't feel like they get enough attention as they should. Like, they don't even get talked about in the same realm as, like, maybe Lord of the Rings. I mean, maybe a hot take, but I do consider these Planet 8 films to be among some of the best released in the last decade. So Matt Reeves is definitely the guy for the job. And I know Robert Pattinson, he's been on a run in these last few years, man. I mean, The Lighthouse, Tenet, Good Time. This guy's on fire. So I expect for him to bring that same fire to the character of Batman.
Same. And so my number one's actually, my most anticipated movie this year is actually more for curiosity than it is like anticipation, but it's actually going to be Hellraiser, which is a Hulu release. But the reason that I'm excited about it is because they're gender swapping the antagonist, but also it's David Bruckner. And one of the things that I got really big into as far as like directing was this past year was Bruckner. Bruckner has done The Ritual, The Night House, and Southbound, which and he also shot one of the VHS things. But like, dude, just wanted to see what he can do with this like really rich world. I'm so excited for it because like just coming out of The Night House. Night House is one of my favorite movies of last year. going back and digging into his filmography, this man could make a 2-hour movie about bananas rotting, and I would go see it.
Wow, bananas rotting. That's that is definitely an image for sure.
He would find some way to make it entertaining. I don't know. Let us know what's the worst movie you guys saw in 2021. Tweet to us at Victims and Villains. And also, let us know what movie you guys are most anticipated to see in 2022. Speaking of the socials, where can people find you online, sir?
You can find me on Facebook as Cales Davis, and that's CALESS. You can find me on Instagram and letterboxd.com under the alias Black Nerd Magic.
You guys can also find me on Letterboxd. I'm at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. And wherever you guys find your podcast from, if you guys go to our website, victimsandvillains.net, you'll find more podcasts like this, links to our Patreon, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. So until next time, have a good night, guys.